Welcome to today's Chefs Forum. On behalf of American Culinary Federation, we are delighted to collaborate and welcome all of the ANFP members tuning in today for this exciting presentation featuring chef experts representing both of our organizations. It's so important for food service professionals to connect, to share, and to offer inspiration and mentorship, which is exactly why we're excited to host this session just for you, the leaders of the culinary, hospitality, and healthcare and nutrition food service industries. I'm Jackie Pressinger, ACF's Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I hope that you're ready for a great demonstration. Please note that Chef is sharing the recipes, so stay tuned for an email with more information following this webinar. Before we begin today's presentation, please note that our special guests will be taking questions from you as they are able. Please use the chat function to collaborate with other viewers and the Q&A function to pose questions to today's guest speakers. So let's get that chat going. If you haven't already, please let us know where you're tuning in from today. And at this time, I'll pass the presentation over to Brad from ANFP.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm Brad Riz, Vice President, Marketing and Member Engagement at ANFP. And we too are excited to collaborate with ACF and provide these valuable educational opportunities. For ANFP members in attendance, on behalf of ANFP, I wanted to say happy first day of Member Appreciation Week. And today I'm delighted to welcome our featured chefs for an exciting demo focusing on healthy dining options and reimagining comfort dishes. Chef Christina Bodanza CEC, CDM CFPP, and Chef Sarah Winchell, MPA, CDM CFPP, will take on the challenge of creating modern, nutritional, and budget-conscious spins on classic meal favorites. Those in attendance are eligible to receive one free continuing education hour. Please be on the lookout in the next few days for an email from ANFP or ACF with instructions on how to access your free CE hour. I'd now like to introduce Chef Christina, who will be cooking for us today. She is a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America, Hyde Park, and is currently employed by Morrison Healthcare as executive chef at University of Florida Health, the Villages Hospital in Lady Lake, Florida. Dual certified by ACF and ANFP, she has been published frequently in ANFP's Nutrition and Food Service Edge magazine and has been a mentor for culinary training programs. Chef Christina is also joined by Anis Valou today. And for our moderator, we have Chef Sarah. Sarah's culinary journey began in 2003, starting in restaurants and transitioning into healthcare full-time, where she's been for over 13 years. Last October, Chef Sarah accepted an offer to be a culinary arts instructor for the Des Moines Public Schools via Des Moines Area Community College, teaching high school students college-accredited courses. Chef Sarah completed her master's in public administration from Drake University in December 2021, as well as having a BA in service management from Grand Valley University and an AAS in culinary arts from the Iowa Culinary Institute at DMA CC. She is the past president of the Iowa Association of Nutrition and Food Service Professionals, the current Young Professional Director at Large on the National ANFP Board, and has been a certified dietary manager, certified food protection professional since 2014. I think Chef Christina is ready to get cooking, and so I'm going to turn the webinar over to our experts. At this time, I'll pass the presentation over to Chef Sarah to kick off today's session.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning for some of you. I know that Chef Christina is going to do some amazing demos here shortly, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're going to be diving into specifically today. We're looking at, and Chef Christina is going to do a great job at presenting some meatless options and specifically some vegan options. If we look at our food trends for 2023, we know that meatless is on the rise, and making more mindful meals and plant-based meals are going to be some of our hottest trends that are not going away. In addition to what Chef Christina is making today, I want to remind everyone that there's other options that you can do and to reimagine those home style options that we're all making in our restaurants, our communities, and wherever we are, even at home. There are ways to make things meatless with some meat alternatives, such as what Christina is going to show today, some soy-based meat products. Meat-like products, but there's also options with lentils, tofu, edamame, and the such. We also are looking at some issues with eggs, if we all haven't been there and been working on it. I come from the great state of Iowa. We're the #1 producer of eggs, so I'm so sorry. but there are plant-based egg products, and those are going to be some of the highest used products upcoming in this year to replace the use of eggs. We also have some grain and legume-based pastas that are going to be making more of an entrance, and you'll be seeing those more and having those requested even more. One recipe in particular that I wanted to talk about, we have this regional classic in Iowa. It's called a ham ball. Think of meatloaf, but with pork. Since we are the #1 pork producers as well, we really love our pork here in Iowa. What I've actually done is I've done this recipe a couple different ways. Obviously, the pork can be higher in fat. We're using a sausage. It can be higher in sodium, especially if you're using ground ham in addition to that. I've made that product with a ham meat-like product in addition with some lentils, and it's turned out fantastic. You can also substitute your recipes if you need to start slow and start incorporating those plant-based products. You can half that recipe. You can do half the meat with half the non-meat item and incorporate them that way. The other thing that I think is so incredible that the trends are showing and that we're seeing already, Christina already has this going. I know we have it here as well, our urban on-site gardens and using products that are close to us. I'm lucky I'm in the middle of one of those agricultural states, but it's still, trying to find products that are close to us that aren't being shipped all over the country can be hard. So I really encourage everyone today to think about how they can incorporate their own regional recipes. And even if, Christina's recipes don't speak to your region, on how you can use those techniques and use our culinary minds to rework everything that we're going to be doing today. So with no further ado, Chef Christina, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. And absolutely, that's one of the really neat things as culinarians is that we can menu engineer, we can recipe engineer, and we can get through these challenges in our supply chain to get around those issues we have, such as eggs, right? I was with some of my colleagues this summer and we were talking about how do you make a panada, that binder for our meat products, our meatloaves, that doesn't have albumin in it. And this was a great workaround. We're going to do a really quick panada today using coconut milk. It works great. So one of the recipes I'll be providing is this coconut milk panada. It starts out with 1.5 cups of panko, equal parts as 1.5 cups of coconut milk. Just pour that right in there. Give it a chance to soak up that starch. We're going to add to that 2 ounces of fresh basil. Got that right here. We're going to mix in some garlic. Love the fresh garlic. I appreciate Anise is a stickler for fresh garlic. She chops it up for me. I never have to worry about having to do it myself. She always takes care of that for me. We're going to add some fresh onion to that as well. Another 2 ounces of that. And put that in there. Some kosher salt. I've got that right here. And we don't need a whole lot of that. Of course, we're always conscious of salt here in healthcare, but a little bit. Salt does a couple of things, and one of those is it opens up our taste buds. So you don't really need a whole lot of that, but it does help us receive those different flavors. And I always like to put just a little bit in there. It kind of tweaks our appetite a little bit. Some black pepper. And then we're going to just mix that all together. And as you can see, and I'll move that a little closer, that coconut milk really absorbs the panko, helps blend it all together, and it really creates a binding action. No egg, no binder. We always think we need that egg and that albumin to create that adhesion, so to speak. And now I have our proteins that we're going to be using today, our 3 proteins. We have our meat substitute. This is a soy-based meat substitute. It looks just like ground beef, like I just took it out of the grocer's freezer. We have our tofu. And we have this really neat little animal here. So this is a hen of the forest mushroom. It looks just like we used to call them the fanny feathers that you'd have on a hen. And that's what it's called, a hen of the forest. Anise told me that back on the islands, they would see them growing on the trees. And when we got them in, she's like, we're going to eat that. So she's going to prepare this later. They're amazing. We have people that come in our cafe. When are you going to do that mushroom entree again? When are you going to do that? They turn out so wonderful. So back to our Mediterranean meatballs. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the meat substitute right into. It's not going to come up there quite so easily. Right into my panada. I'm going to mix it all together. So we've called these many different things. We've called them Beyond the Meatball, the Impossible Meatball. I've called them Not Your Mother's Meatball. We've named them after different movies. But I think what's really going to surprise you is how they absolutely look just like your mother's meatballs. And they really do.
Chef Christina, have you tried this recipe with other different milk alternatives?
I haven't tried any of like the almond milks or the oat milks. I would guess that they would probably have a similar type of a result. But I do know the high fat content in coconut milk. I love it. I love the versatility of it, and it works really well in the stir fry too.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely. So maybe not.
No,
Yeah.
You think coconut milk is the trick?
Yeah.
It could be. So I'm going to put that one out on the internet airwaves. Try it, right? We try it. We see what happens. I'm not sure. I love everything coconut, right?
I'm with you there. I think from my personal experience, I know coconut cream has incorporated into recipes better than even just coconut milk, just sometimes.
Really?
Just high fat content. I know cashew milk has a little bit higher fat content. I've had some great success with some oat milks and almond milks. I think it really takes like anything when you're working with that meatball dish, looking at how the liquid and the fats are working with your meat or non-meat product. Would you say that's probably pretty similar to most of your like incorporated meat dishes?
I do know that when we've used the coconut milk in different types of products, we've had really good success. So haven't really ventured off of that one.
Yeah.
But I would be willing to see what those results are.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, one of the issues we have is that it's one of the big 9 allergens, right? And going with oat milk would avoid that. And of course, we have that anytime we're dealing with in healthcare. Anytime we incorporate one of the big 9s, we start to run into that murky water that we're using one of the allergens. How is that going to react with our patients? Is that going to be an issue? So it could be a really good opportunity to avoid that by going with, say, an oat milk instead of one of the tree nuts. So that would definitely be a worthwhile effort to stay away from the coconut milk, even though we really like it.
I agree. I think that obviously our milk is on the big 9. Oat milk would depending on what kind of oat milk you get, it could fall into the big 9 with the gluten because of the wheat. So I think that really takes on what your clientele is and what you have. I worked in healthcare for many, many years. I know it said 13. I was thinking back the other day, it might be more like 16, but I remember my clientele would change. And so sometimes, that coconut milk is the best alternative instead of using, let's say, the oat milk instead. So
right.
I think you really have to look at what your clientele is.
And I think it's staying away from, say, the egg, because that seems to be a more prevalent allergen. We seem to have more people that are maybe having an egg issue over, say, the nut allergen. And I could be reading that wrong, but that seems to be a little bit more of the issue we run into is the egg allergen more than the oat allergen.
I
So
agree.
in the same pan, and I just want to kind of speed up a little bit because I want to get the smoke going away. I'm going to start my marinara. This is our fresh tomato marinara. And I just want to do this because I want to keep all that wonderful flavor from these meatballs. So this is our fresh tomato marinara, and I'm using these wonderful heirloom tomatoes with this. And I'm going to let this just kind of simmer away as I talk. So our fresh tomato marinara is made with these heirloom tomatoes. We were talking about purchasing local. We have great farms here in Florida, but one of the most interesting we have is our local hydroponic, Florida grown Villages. They call it a controlled environment agricultural greenhouse. Huge, covered, hurricane, drought, doesn't matter. They're vertical gardens. They produce something like 7 times per square acre what you would normally have in an agricultural environment. Fresh tomatoes. We're going to feature them in our Floridian style hen of the forest salad that we're going to make as our last dish. They produce tomatoes and lettuces and just amazing cucumbers. It's endless what they create. And we are so fortunate because we purchase a lot of their produce for our patients and our customers here at the Villages. And I've utilized their tomatoes for our fresh tomato marinara. And I'm going to let this cook here in the pan with our meatless meatballs and kind of let this reduce. I'm going to add some aromatics to this and some fresh herbs and let this cook down. And the recipe is going to be in the comments if they like to say on the blogs. And let this cook down. But I just wanted to kind of get it going for us so that it wouldn't smoke the pan and blow a hole in the side of the hospital, which I think my client would be frowning about, as they say. But yeah, and I did want to kind of go about these meatballs. So you saw the panada, you saw the finished product. I wanted to show you how they hold together really well, or they fall on the table. But I have some finished meatballs here, and I wanted to show you how these work out. So it's one thing to have meatballs. They're uniform. I cooked these off last night. They hold together. They look just like a meatball. They taste amazing. And they are more uniform than an actual meatball. I have had times when we've served these and people have preferred these because they look to them better than the beef meatballs. And they never complain about them like not tasting outstanding. So try this recipe. I can't speak enough about it. They are just so good and so moist and so delicious for so many reasons. And I was so surprised by them because I think that traditionally we thought that the imitation products are kind of like something you want to stay away from. And actually they are just really flavorful and they do really, really well. So yeah, any other questions or thoughts or anything while this cooks down and kind of builds up some flavors for us?
What other recipes have you used that same meatball with? Have you done like a Swedish meatball, spaghetti and meatballs?
We've done Taco Tuesdays.
Yes,
We've done
Taco Tuesdays, and we did I think vegetarian lasagna.
Oh yeah, we pushed that into there too, didn't we?
Vegetarian lasagna with the meatballs, and they were absolutely amazing.
They really, yeah, they cleaned us out of that. Like, where's your fake taco meat? And it's like, oh, we're out of that one. How do you run out of fake taco meat? So yeah, it is really versatile. Now and I say there's different kinds. So there's a soy-based imitation meat. I haven't had an opportunity yet to use the cultured meat. And that's a new one on the horizon. I know that they're still seeking FDA approval and all of the different pathways that they need to go through. I think that as we go along, those type of products are getting a little bit more acceptable. People are getting a little more comfortable with them. It's something new, but I think when the imitation meat first came on the market, everybody was kind of hesitant with that one too. And now it's become, Burger King has it. It's become really a lot more mainstream. So I think that as we go along, people start to think, whether it's because of the taste or the acceptability or even the availability, people become more and more acceptable toward those.
Do you have a specific brand or like what meat substitute are you using today?
So today's is the soy-based product. This one in particular is the Impossible meat, but we have used also the legume-based Beyond Meat. We've used that one in the past as well.
How about those meatballs in the sauce? Do they break down or are they holding together?
Actually, they're holding together so well it popped out of the tongs. They're it had its own little life to itself. Yes. So yeah, it's holding together really well.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I'm going to add some green pepper, some fresh basil. I've already added the fresh basil. I'm going to add some green pepper to this as well. And I'm going to put some garlic in here. I'm going to steal some more of your garlic. I'm not going to leave you any. Some red pepper flakes. Like I said, recipes in the comments.
And how versatile this recipe is based on your region or seasonal availability.
I love Florida. It's always available. So actually, this is one of our recipes in our database. One of the wonderful things with Morrison Healthcare is we have probably 2 million recipes. So it's one of our recipes in our database, but I've of course added a few things that are kind of, you know, that I like to have in my own tomato sauce as well. And then just using the heirloom tomatoes, it gives us all this wonderful color, as you can see.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
So now I'm going to segue over to my companion chef, and she is going to demonstrate one of our colorful, flavorful, and delicious dishes that really started our trend of, oh my gosh, the patients and the customers are eating all of our vegetarian items. Yes. We need to make more instead of that little dish off to the side. She's going to do our coconut curry stir fry. So we're going to start with tofu. Of course. Okay.
So we're going to start with some tofu cubes right here. Tofu block, cut it into some cubes.
Now, is this a tofu product that you had to press, Chef?
Actually, we get this in this way.
Awesome, wonderful.
So we always get the firm tofu, just it's easier to handle and holds up quite well on the buffet line.
That's great to hear. It's always a concern sometimes when you're not knowledgeable on the meat substitutes, on, you know, and alternatives. What should I buy? How do I know which one I should use for what application?
Right. So cornstarch. Yes. So one of the things we always notice is people want mouthfeel, right? They want different textures in their mouth. And we tried some different ways. We found the very best way to get that mouthfeel is to always have it crispy. And we found that the best way to do that was just to dust it in some cornstarch. So this really avoided the wheat, the gluten, the allergen, and always provided a nice crispy. I'm going to go a little hotter for you. You know, we apologize. We got these. This is all new equipment. Isn't it beautiful? We were more excited about the pans and the burners than anything else today. As only cooks
Gorgeous.
would be.
It's a gorgeous setup. It's beautiful.
It is gorgeous. Like, everybody's like, oh, what happened? We're like, we got burners. So we've decided on the cornstarch for our crispiness on our tofu. And again, it's working out really well. It gives us this nice crispy crust on our tofu and provides that nice sealant to the product that keeps it fresh, even on the buffet line. Generally, we go through our products fairly well when we're serving in our cafe. Our cafe has our hotline open for about 3 hours and it turns over fairly well too. But it does give us a good hold up there. So the cornstarch provides a sealant, it keeps it nice and crispy, provides a nice mouthfeel, and then it holds up well with the sauces too. So I'm gonna give you a hand by making sure that we don't set fire to the hospital, because again, I think the client's gonna frown on that.
When you look at budgets, we all love that part of our jobs, right? The budget part. Have you noticed any difference when using meat substitutes? Have you noticed any cost increase that you need to then account for elsewhere?
Well, actually, no, because the vegetable component really offsets the meat. So that is another bonus to what we're offering, because we're looking at using the My Plate as more of a guide. You know, traditionally, it was always meat, right? The meat, the center of the plate. Everybody wanted the 6-ounce portion of meat and a 2-ounce serving of vegetable. And my experience in senior living was always my residents saying, "Where's the meat?" Like, they just wanted so much meat because that was what they grew up with, right? They wanted that huge piece of beef. And going plant forward and plant-based, you're really able to offset that with your vegetable component. So stacking your proteins, giving that healthier portion of vegetable, that really offsets your cost, which is the highest, right? Your protein. And that's where we've really seen the benefit of being able to go more to the vegetarian side, utilizing even plant-based proteins, as we've really been able to offset our budget. Our budgets are really hitting a much better sweet spot because of that. Just by encouraging more plant-centric dining.
I love that. I love that. I know I just taught the nutrition course for my students, and we were talking about My Plate, and I made them all enter in their own weight and height and everything. And I said, all right, now look at how much protein it's recommended for you in a day and how much fruit and vegetables are recommended in a day. And their minds were blown as high schoolers, which was, wonderful. But then I talked to adults and working in long-term care and healthcare and working in restaurants. The amount of fruits and vegetables, I love that you're pushing that forward in this different way. And it's such a cool way. When you do communicate or promote or market these meatless options, how do you do that in your setting? How do you make the meatless options more appealing?
So that's a really simple one. And this is absolutely about the marketing. One of the great things I can see, so I'm actually a little closer now to the screen. I can see that you can't see our marketing materials. So this is some of our marketing materials. We have these wonderful signs that Morrison Healthcare gives us, and it's plant forward. Everything is vegetable. Everything is the beauty of utilizing that colorful, flavorful. Vegetables are the center of the plate. We don't push forward this big slice of beef followed by, do you want a little bit of vegetable with the plate? You do your starch, you do your vegetable, and then you accent it with your protein. So whether that's, some strips of brisket or a grilled chicken breast or chicken thigh with a bulgogi barbecue, something like that, you're really getting the benefit of those wonderful roasted vegetables. I think the tricolored carrots that we have down here, that's got to be everybody's favorite. When Denise does her roasted tricolored carrots, they're like gone because they're so delicious looking. They're so colorful. They have such an amazing caramelization on them. So really getting that appeal from just looking at them makes your mouth water, makes you want them. And the protein portion, while it's very appetizing, kind of competes as opposed to what we used to do, right? It was all about that roast turkey at Thanksgiving time, and oh yeah, the rest of the stuff was really good. So we kind of we pivot the script. We flip the script on what people are eating. Yes.
I do have a question that came from our viewers and asked, how different is the flavor of the meatballs with the meat alternative to, like, let's say you use beef or pork? Do you have to take that in consideration when adding different spices or different herbs, or even different sauces?
So that's what is so amazing. There isn't a difference. Is there? Yeah, really, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It is, it's like magic. Like, woo, look at that. There isn't a difference. They are less greasy.
Yeah.
That is really the only difference. You taste the basil, you taste the salt, you taste whatever you put in them, you taste the herbs. You taste, it's good. It's yeah, it's not really like Angus. I don't know what like Angus beef, but it's not beef. It just tastes really good. And of course you get in there the flavor of whatever it's in. If it's in a marinara sauce, we have made them more of like a Greek style with some feta cheese mixed in, and then you kind of
Ooh,
taste
yeah.
it.
Beautiful.
So if you put Parmesan in there, you're going to taste the Parmesan. If you choose to make them more of like a Swedish meatball, as you said earlier, then you would taste that mushroom. If you did them blended, and I was thinking of that earlier because I'm a huge mushroom fan. I love mushrooms. I love mushrooms in any manner, shape, or form. And so I was thinking, how about if you did like a blended mushroom and quinoa? You would probably taste like more of that Duxelle flavor. So I think you could try that.
Yeah.
I think that really they would take on any kind of profile you put into them. I don't think you'd have a problem, and I don't think you would be disappointed.
Wonderful. Now what's happening over here? We have another pan going.
Yes, I'm adding some curry powder to my vegetables.
I'm gonna turn the TV a little bit. So
Very low.
the computer. So here, there's the boom.
So here I'm adding some curry powder to the pepper mix for the curry tofu stir fry. I love curry. I'm from the islands, so we do curry with everything.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to.
And are you searing that tofu on all sides, or is it thin enough that it's just being seared on two sides?
All sides.
All sides. And do you feel like that, in my experience with working with tofu, especially putting in cornstarch, it gives you that lovely, lovely mouthfeel of crispiness, but it holds it together as well. And so do you see that as well, as the tofu is not breaking apart?
Right.
Right. Love it. Love it. We have a question, and it says, I'm thinking about making a change into healthcare dining. What advice do you have for chefs coming from the restaurant kitchens? I'll open up to you two wonderful women first.
You came from absolutely from restaurant to
Yes.
healthcare.
Yes, I had no healthcare experience, especially when it's in the kitchen. I had zero experience whatsoever. So I had to incorporate my restaurant knowledge and bring it to the healthcare. And then it was mind opening actually. So honestly, it's just basically the same thing, but a little more versatile. Like you have to change the recipes that you're used to with the restaurant and make it a little more, what can I say, healthier option for the patients. So it's challenging, but it's worth it. So
As a chef, would you say though that you already had some of that knowledge, you were just not utilizing it in that way before?
right. Because in restaurant business, a lot of people, they go more towards the, I wouldn't want to say unhealthy parts of cooking, but they want more, what can I say, more fats added to the cooking versus the hospital where you like tone it down on the fats, on the sodiums and everything else. So it was mind blowing and mind opening. So it was kind of challenging for me there a little bit, and it helped me along the way. So yeah.
Chef Christina, what about for you?
So I think the first mind-opening thing for me was when somebody said to me, we need a puree diet, and I thought they meant to pray over the food. It took me the longest time to understand that was not what she meant. I actually struggled really badly at first because it seemed like a totally foreign way of cooking. And then I realized where I was at, that these people working there had worked there a long time and really did not know how to cook. And finally, a young girl that worked there took me aside and she said, "You know how to cook." And I said, well, yes, I do. She said, "Then stop cooking like you're trying to cook." I said, "Well, I'm trying to cook like how they're showing me." And then I realized that this was a good place for me to be. And that was a really great experience. I just reconnected with somebody from that hospital, from that campus, and they have grown by leaps and bounds since then. I still stay in contact with them, and it's beautiful what they're doing now. So this was quite a few years ago. The hospital food used to have a really bad reputation, and hospitals have come a long way, and Villages Health is a great example of it. We are perched on the edge of a huge adult 55 and older community. 140,000 people live in the Villages. And we have so many people that are leaving comfort food behind and looking for options that are elevated. And this type of cuisine you're seeing here is offered daily in our cafe. And we are bringing these dishes to our patient menu through Morrison Healthcare. And it's beautiful. When we have vegetarians and vegans come here for their healthcare needs, and we are able to give them. I made a curry tofu for breakfast this morning for someone. It was amazing. It was delicious. I know that patient, it really made their day to have that dish for their breakfast. So it's coming. It's not coming tomorrow. It's here today, and we are able to really fill that need.
Awesome. You answered 2 questions in one, so you helped me there. So do you have any challenges getting any of your older diners to accept vegan dishes? And do you have any recommendations on how you promote meatless or substitute in a meat and potatoes state? Oh, this person's coming from Nebraska. They're right next to me. I know. I get it. We're in the meat and potato state too sometimes. So depends on our demographic where we're at. Any recommendations for that?
So I actually had a patient the other day that I rounded with, and I was able to give them some advice. This gentleman was having some swallowing issues, and he was definitely a meat and potatoes person. And his wife was asking me, how could she help him? And I knew exactly where he was, because my husband actually is there. He's the cornflakes for breakfast, the burger for lunch type of person. Since we got married and I cook dinner every night, Bob looked at me the other day and he said, we don't eat meat for dinner, do we? And I said, "Why do you ask, dear?" So introduce it slowly. Just incorporate vegetables into your diet. Add cucumbers. If you eat cucumbers, add cucumbers. Yes. Add tomatoes if you eat tomatoes. And then sneak an olive in there every now and then, and then maybe orange slices. And now my husband has a couple of fried eggs and potatoes for dinner, and then he has cucumbers and tomatoes and green olives and oranges and apple slices for dinner. Nice. It's a veggie platter.
So coming from healthcare and coming from those Midwest states, I completely understand that concern. But what I started doing was I started it with dishes that classically did not have meat in it. So I would make my like macaroni and cheese, a lot of cream, a lot of cheese is usually how I'd make it. And I started incorporating, I'd still use cheese, but I'd use some coconut cream instead. Oh. And I would puree up some butternut squash or some sweet potatoes and add some of that richness in there. Idea. Making sure there's some onions and garlic and all those yummy things. And then serving that with, some beautiful steamed broccoli on the side. So, they're getting that protein component as well. I've used some of the protein-based pastas, and I've been hit or miss depending on what I'm using it for. But really to use those things. And another thing that I'll serve with that meal is peas. Peas are very high in protein, very, very high in protein. So, some green peas with that beautiful macaroni and cheese, like how classic is that? Or like the vegetarian lasagna, I've done that as well. And I start incorporating those slowly to my meat and potato people. and they don't even realize it after a while.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And I have a 14-year-old at home, so I have another demographic of trying to incorporate vegetables, and yeah, it's totally able to be done, but really you have to be creative and know who your people are. And to also, I've noticed that if you do chef demos like this, especially in healthcare, and open people's minds up to how good this food tastes, it really helps the buy-in. Do you see that as well?
They've been going by the windows. I don't know if you've seen them. They've been like, they all want to come in and get a taste. So we are ready to plate 2 of our dishes.
Yes.
So Anise, I'm going to start with yours. You've got the coconut curry tofu.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is actually I know we've been using them as spoon rests, and this is actually your plating. Whatever you want to use. So I mentioned, you know, colorful and delicious, and that's really what we're looking at here.
And you added some coconut milk to that and your curry.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Oh, yep.
You were talking while you were doing some of that, Chef Anna. Sorry.
We've got the pepper strips, the red and green pepper strips. We've got the deep fried, well, pan fried. We didn't want to go too deep with in our enclosed environment with no smoke alarms. We're going to save this for my lunch.
I'm kind of jealous right now. Thank you. Speaking of puree, how do you notice that your meat alternatives, like your Impossible meat and your tofu, work with, I would assume, like my working with that, they work really well with the ground texture, but how about puree? How are they working for that?
So purees are a bit more of a challenge. We haven't actually encountered it yet. We've talked about it. We're looking at how to do even our grounds better.
Mm-hmm.
So purees are coconut curry tofu, as you can see.
Beautiful.
We've got I wanted to cut open the tofu and show you.
Have your dietitians been excited about this?
Oh, absolutely. Isn't that beautiful? You just like want to bite right into that.
Yeah.
So that's our coconut curry tofu. And
great job, Chef Annis.
Thank you.
With the meatballs and the heirloom tomato sauce.
And do those meatballs freeze? Have you tried that where you make a bunch of them and freeze them?
Oh, absolutely.
They work out really good.
Love it.
Yeah.
We all like, those foods that we can like grab and we're like, hey, I can prep this way ahead of time. And now I can, maybe this is my special, or maybe, I make extra that day. I love it. Love it. Versatility. It's what we need in our lives.
Absolutely.
We've got some of that nice heirloom tomato marinara sauce. Only thing I forgot was the Parmesan. So there you go with your heirloom tomato on your.
Ooh, yes.
So then the last thing we're going
to set them down, by the way.
What's that?
When you set them down, we can't quite see them.
You can't quite see them. That's.
No, if you want to pull them back by your mushroom.
There we go. We'll move the proteins out of the way.
Yeah. Back a little farther, Chef Annis. Yes. Perfect. Prop it up. Good job. Food Network here. You both.
We're going to use the hen here.
One question was asked, would you still see a significant nutritional and health benefit? You replace a percentage of meat in a recipe with the meat alternative instead of all the meat. I would say yes, especially if you are looking to reduce, depending on what recipe it is, reduce the amount of sodium someone's consuming. If you want to increase the amount of grains, you could add even like brown rice, and I'm thinking of like quinoa and things like that you could add into some of these, meatball, meatloaf, and depending on what you're wanting to do, you can definitely make that switch. Don't you think, Chef Christina? You can start it out slow.
Absolutely. So the soy-based meat alternative obviously still has a very good protein profile. The legume-based still was pretty decent. Now you can always look at adding some other kind of a protein enhancer, whether it's, as you said, the higher protein, maybe the chickpea flour or chickpea pasta.
Yeah.
The lentil pasta, that can help you build that protein profile if you want. So there are other options that you can do to build that protein up if that is what your goal is. Anytime you look at going away from the carnivore diet to more of a plant-based diet, we do run into that. And especially if you're looking at as being a member of, the ANFP and being a CDM, that's always a concern, especially with senior dining, anybody who's nutritionally compromised. We always have to keep that on our radar. In healthcare, obviously, we have that as a concern for certain members of our patient base. So you have to keep that in consideration. You have to look at that. But then there's, of course, a lot of school of thought of how much is that a concern in certain demographics. So it does become a patient-to-patient client to client concern. But there are other options. Of course, you always have to look at what is the whole picture, what is the whole daily intake. So, drawing from different groups, different grains, different options, different things that you're eating. If all you're eating is rice all day long, yeah, that's obviously a concern. But if you're eating a varied diet and you're incorporating lots of different food groups into that diet, I believe you can definitely maintain a balance that is nutritionally sound.
I love it. That's when I teach my nutrition class, I always try to remind my students, like I have students that like to work out quite a bit and they're like, I need protein. I said, actually, you need those carbohydrates from those fruits and those vegetables to keep you going. And I said, there's all these different components. And so, and those are culinary arts students. These aren't ANFP. These are not CDM students. These are culinary arts students, that are obtaining their culinary arts degree. So, as chefs, we have this knowledge and we obtain it in one way of our education or not. You just have to tap into it.
Right.
You know how to make things look pretty, right?
Right.
We know that different colors make a dish look even more appealing. It's how we can incorporate those different colors and not always using fats, as we were talking about Chef Annis.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think, we were talking about this the other day. So many people read an article. My physician said, Dr. Google, talk to your physician. They have 8 years experience plus an internship.
Correct.
Why we read one article from one bodybuilder and we suddenly think that we're credentialed in bodybuilding and knowledge of nutrition. I took my CDM certification. We have more knowledge than the last article from some non-credentialed individual. And so it's very frustrating when somebody comes to me with, I just read this article and I need all the selenium per se. Really doing research means consulting your professionals and go to your physician and ask, what kind of protein do I really need to be able to power lift for 8 hours a day? And do I really need to be eating this much protein in my diet, 10 T-bone steaks a day? Because that doesn't do you any good if you're not getting all the nutrients and all the fat soluble nutrients that you need that are going to help you get through your diet. So it is a little frustrating when people think that by reading some article from somebody that now they are this professional and that they know more than maybe their caregivers do or their nutrition team. So, you got to trust in your whole profile to make those decisions. So the last dish, based response, we're going to do the hen of the forest. So we're just going to start with, we should patent this. This is our breading mixture that we actually created with the whole team. We wanted to start breading our own chicken tenders, and we had our base recipe that seemed to fall a little bit flat with our test group, which was our production team. So we brought everybody around and we had this enormous cultural base. We had people from the islands, we had people from the upper Midwest, and we kept trying chicken tenders and we just couldn't hit the mark. And finally we found the special spice, blackened seasoning. So recipe is in our comments. We'll be sending that out shortly. We already mixed it up because we knew we get cooking. We lose track of time.
Yes.
So there is the batter. We already mixed it up. Anise cut up the chicken, cut up the head of the forest. Here, I'm gonna slice
And
it.
in Iowa, we call these chicken of the woods, and we can actually find these out in the woods. So I think that you were saying that some people, you know, in the islands, you have them as well, Chef Anise.
Yes, we have them on the trees, like growing up.
Yeah.
As a kid, I would go to the garden and see them on the trees, but
And you
I
stay
take
away
them
from them.
online, yeah, because I'm like, okay, mushrooms, cool. So when I came here and Chef Christina introduced me to the hen of the woods, I'm like, wait, you guys eat these? And she told me, yeah, they fry them up and saute them and whatnot. I'm like, oh, we never eat those back home. You know, they're on the trees, they're for the animals or whatever, so.
Probably poisonous, and they're gonna make you see God for 3 days.
Now, that brings up a great point. Make sure everyone's buying their mushrooms from a credible source or very knowledgeable about mushrooms before going mushroom hunting. Here in the Midwest, it's soon to be, here in the Midwest, it's soon to be morel mushroom season, so it's a very exciting time for us here. And this would be a great alternative to those that are having issues with like a soy allergy or soy alternative, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then that legume, there are some legume alternatives, as well as I've seen and made my own black bean burgers and use some of those different alternatives. So you have to search. So there are some suggestions I know that we've brought up here and we've talked about. The tofu, I assume, and curry isn't spicy, I assume. Knowing myself and most curries, yeah. Curry's just a spice blend. A lot of that colors from that turmeric. You can make it spicier though, I assume. I mean, I would make it spicier for myself, but if I was in the setting that you're in, probably not.
Spicy, so.
As long as everything's spicy.
And then we are running it's about 12:51 right now. So as you're finishing up this final recipe, any final words about what you've done today and recommendations for those going out into the world and trying to incorporate more meatless options?
So, really quickly, she's got that mushroom turned over there. I'm preparing the green goddess dressing as only a goddess would want it prepared, which is no animals were killed in the making of this dressing. That's almost done. We've got the industrial strength RoboFoo back here. And I know we had asked earlier that while this is gonna cook, or while it's gonna mix, we're gonna quiet the volume so that we don't fill anybody's ears. So I'm gonna buzz this really quickly. She's gonna finish that. It's gonna take just like 15 seconds. And then we're gonna plate up and we'll be completed. If that's okay, Sarah?
Yeah, you're doing great.
All right, so here's all the ingredients are in here. I've got some avocado, garlic, fresh dill, parsley, Dijon, kosher salt, and a little bit of brown sugar because the tahini gets a little bitter.
Oh, yeah.
Sesame, kind of sesame butter, but it gets a little bitter. So the brown sugar kind of offsets that. And then a little water to keep it from getting too tight. So I'm gonna go ahead and buzz that up, and Lisa's gonna finish that mushroom, and then we will finish the dish. Okay, hopefully the power.
I know Chef Christina used some brown sugar, but I've done a similar recipe and I've used honey. Speaking of like local products, we'd like to tap into some of our local honey that we have around here in the Des Moines area. I have I'm very fortunate. I have a location where I have a farm and with agriculture and horticulture nearby. So like my students are smoking lamb. Actually, they're in class right now while I'm on here, smoking lamb that we got from our farm. But we really like to tap into those local connections so we can use up what our local product is. We are in the Midwest, so we're just coming into spring. If you are looking at a way to manage your sodium, I know this has come up a lot with like Impossible Meat has a lot of sodium. Look at that sodium impact and then see if there's any other alternatives you can mix with that. So maybe you are making that taco meat with the Impossible beef, but you can add some black beans to add some nice protein, some nice texture, but to cut back on that sodium at the same time. So that's one of your options. Don't think that your protein has to be from one source at all times when you're making some of these dishes. And then is the tofu, the tofu is really nice on keeping that sodium low, especially if you make sure that you're, looking at the ones with certain specs. And you can use that tofu if you get a softer tofu, obviously silken it if you need a creamier texture for something. If you weren't able to use the coconut milk, but you could still use soy. Would you say it's easier or more difficult to hit the nutritional requirements, such as carbs and vitamins, when using the meat alternatives? Chef, I'll answer a part of it, but I would say yes, it's much easier actually, because you're able to be more forward on when we talk about my plate. Look at that, a beautiful plate, vegetables.
So there's your mushrooms on that. There's some of our beautiful heirloom tomatoes on there. And here is your green goddess dressing, as only a green goddess would want it prepared. No animals were killed in the making of this dressing. On that beautiful butter crunch lettuce from the Village's Grown Controlled Environment Agriculture. I have to keep reading it because I can never remember how to say it just perfectly. But so what a beautiful meal you have here. Mediterranean meatballs with heirloom tomato marinara. You've got your first course here with your salad. You've got some stir-fried tofu with your stir-fried vegetables. Plant-based. What is not flavorful, colorful, and delicious about all three dishes?
Right.
The rubber tree plant just walked by the window. I cannot believe this team. We're playing with our food here at the Village's Hospital.
Well, it looks like you're having, let's be honest here, you are having tons of fun. These dishes are gorgeous. I know green goddess dressing is one of my favorites that I introduced my students to make in all different forms. And I don't know if you have this problem in, I call it a problem because it's one of my least favorite foods, but ranch is king in the Midwest for some reason. I love green goddess dressing. I'm not a ranch fan. And I've turned many of my students and even people that work here into green goddess fans. And that gets tons of herbs in there, healthy fats. So a lot better than, that buttermilk ranch. So, and you can manage the sodium on that as well. We talk about managing our sodium. I think when we look at food trends, we don't want to look at the fad diets. We want to look at the things that are here to stay and are true health concerns, and obviously replacing meat-based proteins or animal-based proteins with non-animal-based proteins is something that's going to be continuing to grow, as well as simplicity and homemade foods. And it looks like you're doing a great job here. As I sign off today and turn it over to Jackie, is there anything else you can say, chefs?
You know what? Find something you love doing and you never work a day in your life. With the ANFP and the ACF behind us, we will never work a day in our life, that's for sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been a blast.
You're very talented chefs. I'm so glad I could do this with you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that had so many questions. They were very helpful in helping to direct this whole experience.
Well, thank you. Thank all of you. And a huge round of virtual applause as we thank Chef Christina, Chef Sarah, and of course, Chef Anise as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your culinary insights and for representing both ACF and the ANFP community so well today. Bravo. And I really wish I was there as well. I wish I could smell this through the screen. Everything looks fabulous. And I know I'm ready for lunch. So we will send a survey and the recording out along with the recipes as well. Please do take the time to complete the survey so we can continue to offer educational opportunities that best interest you. Be on the lookout for ACF and ANFP's next collaborative webinar, but you're also welcome to join us on our next ACF webinar on April 6th as we'll learn the secrets of Southern biscuits with Chef Virginia Willis. For more culinary inspiration or to register for upcoming webinars, feel free to check out our new site, wearechefs.com, and mark your calendars. I know both of our associations are heading to the Big Easy this summer. For both ACF and ANFP national conventions. And as a reminder, ACF National Convention is July 16th to the 19th, with our Educator Summit being held on July 16th. So on behalf of the ACF, thank you again to ANFP for your continued partnership, and thank you for collaborating with us today. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, thanks to today's special guest chefs. We'll see you all real soon.